Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the EBF 2021 Summer Conference for the early risers here at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. I know what you're first thinking. Where is my MC, Alex Asifo? Don't worry, Alex will be here shortly. I'm sure you're happy to see me too. I'm Michael Barham with the Emma Bowen Foundation, and so pleased to be introing our tech brunch today. It's a bit of a more intimate event. We're not only going to see a great interview for the first half hour, actually led by EBF alum Trisha Gammas of Tony Cole of the NFL. And this happens to be, and I think the first time in our 2 virtual conferences that we're doing an in-person interview so that you will see them live in studio together. We'll also have the second half to network directly with members of the EBF Tech Committee. Just a real quick background there. Who's the EBF Tech Committee? Those are members of our Emma Bowen Foundation National Board of Directors and our National Advisory Council. They're seasoned professionals who have decades of experience in the industry. They're focused on expanding EBF's reach in the world of tech partners, providing worthwhile, engaging content to EBF fellows, and most importantly, they want to meet you, our EBF fellows, today. So it should be a ton of fun. And like I said, a little bit of a more intimate event. Our fearless leader of the tech committee is Chris Lammers. He's also the secretary of our board. He's been involved with the foundation for a very long time and is truly committed. He's also a COO at Cable Lab. So I'm so delighted to work with Chris and so glad to introduce him here. Hi, Chris.
Michael, thank you for the introduction and welcome alums and interns and fellows. This is a great opportunity. Probably, I think this is now the 5th tech brunch we've done, although the 2nd virtual one. And no, we do not have DoorDash arriving at your homes with brunch today. Would that we had been that creative. I've had the good fortune to work with the tech committee since we started it back in 2009. We currently have 10 members. As Michael mentioned, they're representatives not only of the board and the National Advisory Committee and key partner companies, but as if not more important, also alums and fellows, including Trisha Gammas, that I'll introduce in just a bit. And this group has been instrumental in focusing on technology opportunities for our alums and our fellows, both groups. And, you know, in the past year, we've been focused on webinars. We've done 3, one on streaming media, one on esports, and the most recent one on your virtual presence and the technology that supports it. We're currently looking at outreach to partner companies in the broad sense of the technology sector, not just manufacturing, but also streaming, digital production, workflow solutions, esports and gaming, IoT, and digital journalism, just to name 3, as this construct of technology really is expanding. And we need look no farther than the organizations that our alums are supporting when they graduate from EBF. And we're using that as a leading indicator of how we, as an organization, should be embracing these companies as well. And last but not least, we provide support to this event, the summer conference, and other events that EBF supports. With that, I'd like to introduce Trisha Gammas, who was a 2012 EBF alum. Trisha is creative and strategic marketer with experience spanning streaming, film, television, and music. She is currently senior manager social media marketing at Amazon Prime Video. Previously, she held positions with 20th Century Fox, Fox Broadcasting, Live Nation, and Disney, and will be conducting an interview on the arc of careers, hers and also Tony Cole's from the NFL. Trisha, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Trisha Gammas, and I'm a proud alum of the Emma Bowen Foundation. And I'm here with Tony Cole in this awesome NFL studio from Los Angeles, California, actually. So we're the West Coast team. I'm so excited to host this conversation with Tony.
No, you're not.
I'm so excited. Over the past few days, I really gotten to know Tony. He's such a pleasure. I only wish you guys could all meet him in person. He has a very storied career, and I'm excited to get you guys the opportunity to meet him today. So, fortunately, or I guess unfortunately, Tony and I actually worked at ABC at the same time. Unknowingly, we didn't know each other, but it's funny that we crossed paths a lot, knew a lot of the same people. Mm-hmm. And so it's great to come now full circle after, ABC was my corporate sponsor to kind of interview Tony, know more about him. And he's already been such a pleasure with myself, kind of talking about our careers and whatnot. So excited to kind of just jump right in. So I guess, Tony, I'm going to face you now since unfortunately I can't see the audience.
Two amateurs on camera here.
Yeah, two tech amateurs on camera here in a very beautiful studio.
We're used to being on the other side of the camera.
Yes, definitely. But let's just jump right in, Tony. Would love to have you introduce yourself, your company, your primary responsibilities. Kind of where are you now?
Okay, so I just started as Vice President of Media Operations here at NFL Media in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Responsible for technical direction strategy going forward. We're in the podcast studio in Culver City, which this is the first interview that's taken place in here since COVID. So no one's been in here since then. So that's pretty good. But we're preparing to move ourselves to a brand new 250,000 square foot facility right next to SoFi Stadium. So we're in the middle of a big move and a big build out. So It's been fun. It's been exciting.
And it'll be even more impressive than this. This is already impressive. So SoFi Stadium is a huge, huge center. That's awesome. Well, tell us about how you got your start.
Oh God.
Tell us about like day one. I know you were an engineering major.
Yes.
If you can kind of share your story about what you studied in college and where you started into your career.
Well, I went to Howard University and I went there primarily to major in engineering, but I always knew I wanted to be in broadcasting. That was something I grew up looking at the Winter Olympics, and I just was really enthralled with what it took to do that. But I went through it by going into electrical engineering at Howard University. Fortunately, Howard University had a radio station, still does, WHUR-FM, and I went over to the radio station and volunteered and worked in the radio station. And around that time, Howard University obtained a license to build a television station. That was WHMM at the time, Channel 32 in Washington, D.C. And it was decided that if they had enough students, they would build it totally with students and students alone, which had never been done. There were a group of us, about 7 of us in engineering school at the time, all wanted to go into broadcasting. But in engineering, if you graduate, you were expected to go to work at Bell Labs, HP, TI. Broadcasting was something technicians did. Real engineers didn't go into broadcasting, but it was a core group of us that wanted to do that. So we got together, we started a broadcast engineering club, and we bought a set of books. It was written by Harold Ennis at the time, who had written a series of books on broadcasting. And we started a club, and we taught ourselves the fundamentals of broadcasting. And learn how to read waveform monitors and vector scopes, went through the whole thing. And at the end of that first year, ABC was known for its engineering. They had done all the Olympics with the exception of 2 up until that time.
Oh, wow.
And so a bunch of us really wanted that. And it was a very famous person, Julius Bonathan, who was president of broadcast operations and engineering at the time at ABC. Yeah. So we wrote Julie a letter and said, hey, look, we're building a station, et cetera, and we'd like for you to come down and see what we're doing. Lo and behold, he accepted it. So he came down, we touring him around the station, we showed him what we were doing, we told him what we were trying to do, et cetera. And Julie actually got sort of interested, excited about it. He went back to New York, and a week later, he called our school, our scholastics sponsor, and said, send me those 7 students. I'd like for them to come up. I want to give them a tour of ABC New York.
Nice.
So we go up to New York, and lo and behold, Julie offered us all vacation relief jobs with ABC that summer.
Oh, wow.
And so we all worked for ABC that summer, and we really went about trying to learn everything we could. The very next summer, we actually were hired by NBC. in Washington, D.C. And we worked at NBC for the summer. And at the end of that time, we knew enough ourselves. We had taught ourselves enough, and we knew enough that we actually built and put on the air, I think it was 81, 82.
So 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. Howard University's television station.
Nice.
So it was built totally by students, and we did it and got it on the air. It was the first Black-owned PBS station in the U.S.,
Awesome.
and it was very good. And after we got that on the air, I decided I really wanted to go back to ABC. So I actually picked up the phone and called Julie, and he answered. I don't know why. And he offered me a job. And I started at ABC in Washington, D.C. as a tech manager.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
Wow.
so to speak.
That's an amazing start. So you reached out on your own.
Yeah.
Just picked up a phone, found the contact information.
Well, he had hired us 2 years before. So I sort of knew how to get in touch with him.
Okay.
And we weren't using email a lot, but
Yeah.
I just picked up the phone and called New York and asked for Julius Bonathan and told him who I was, and he answered the phone.
That's awesome.
Which Julie, I would encourage anybody to look up Julius Bonathan. He really was a legend in the business. A lot of people learned a lot of things from Julie and got opportunities from Julie. He was the first broadcast, I think he was first president of broadcast operations and engineering at ABC, and he was a mathematician.
Wow.
He was not an engineer.
So that was his background.
That was his background.
Wow, that's amazing. Speaking of that background, because I know you mentioned you have electrical engineering experience. So for some of our students today who are maybe studying engineering as well and looking to go into broadcast and whatnot, can you share a little bit about your experience of like what you learn academically, but also what you learn, you know, in your work on the job, because you had those opportunities similar to what a lot of our Emma Bowen students have,
Right.
and how those kind of either parallel path or you saw, you know, one kind of tipping the weight in the other when it came to like your actual career?
Yeah, you know, it was really important to take full advantage of the opportunities I had. So when I was working as a vacation relief both for ABC and NBC, I did every job I could. I learned videotape, I learned camera, I learned switching. So took advantage. I even did maintenance. I learned how to work on videotape machines and whatnot. So I took advantage of every opportunity I was given. So by the time I went back to the network, and truth be told, you know, coming in as a student and being hired as a vacation relief engineer was interesting because they sort of looked down on you a little bit at that time.
Why is that?
Because probably because I knew a lot more than most students did at the time. I knew how to set up tape machines. I knew how to do maintenance. And so, you know, there was a little serious. And I said to myself, if I ever come back to ABC, I'm going to come back as their boss.
Yeah.
And that was a goal I set for myself, realistically.
Right.
So when I
take note, everyone.
So when I did go back, I didn't have to go back as an engineer. It would have been a fine. I went back as a manager. And so all the opportunities that I had taken to learn everything about the business really paid off because I was able to go in as a tech manager in charge of E&G operations and really went from there. So taking that opportunity and learning everything you can. And now, today, I think it's much easier. You don't have to be a quote unquote engineer to do it.
Right.
The one good thing I learned, I had a professor tell me was that when I graduated, he says, you're not an engineer. We've only taught you how to think like an engineer. And so that really reflected on the attitude I took toward things. I knew how to think about things in a logical way, and that really helped me progress. But nowadays, there are so many things on the internet. I mean, you can get a full certification, your Amazon certification by studying for it online. There are a lot of videos at SIMTI and other places that are online. And if you're really serious about yourself and being prepped, then go online, spend the time, learn as much as you can, because you go in much more prepared. Even if you don't have actual work experience, I think it makes you a more interesting person. I think it makes you more available. People will want to talk to you if you know your subject matter a little bit better than on average. And it takes time to do that. You have to be dedicated.
Right. Just like you read those books,
Yep.
you made the phone calls.
And I still have all those books.
That's amazing. Do you feel like there's still not to jump ahead, but thinking of technology, do you feel like there's still some stuff that's relatable?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's
absolutely.
awesome.
I still go back and look at it sometimes. Sometimes I even see problems today. I said, oh, I remember. Oh, and I'll go back and look in one of those books. Like I said, I was taught how to think like an engineer.
Right.
You're not an engineer until you get your PhD.
Right.
I don't have that.
So the applications of what you learned, I mean, it sounds like it helped. And I think that's a good thing too, is when we're when we're younger, we're studying things and we're really taught, like you said, to think about, how do you apply this to that? But your on the job experience is what allowed you to marry the two together and really made you experienced and skilled enough so to impress your bosses. And like, if we can talk a little bit about that, because I know a lot of the students here today are probably also dealing with looking for mentors or looking for people that will, they can call years down the line and say like, hey, like I'm looking to come back to this job and be someone's boss. Let's say, how do you, I guess, can you shed some light, I guess, on how it is to have like a mentor and like make those connections and the importance of networking on the job?
Well, it's invaluable, number one.
Yeah.
Most of my opportunities have come from showing myself to be capable and available and willing to do things that maybe don't come naturally. I think it's invaluable that you take the opportunity to go talk to people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've presented myself to many different people over the years and just said, can you tell me about this? I have an interest in it. And I let them know why I come at it the way I do. And I'm with very few exceptions, people have always been open with me about things, and they take the time and sit down. In fact, when I'm hiring, I do the exact same thing. If I've got 10 vacation relief jobs, I'll hire five really good ones, really good people who've been in the business, who have a lot of experience. But I keep that other 5 positions to look for people who maybe don't have the experience, but who show a lot of interest, a lot of potential, who've taken the time to study, who know what business I'm into. That takes the time to know about the company, takes time to learn what it is we're trying to do. I mean, you can look at a company and study what their strategic initiatives are, where they're going. And if you come in and you can talk to me about that, I'm probably going to give you an opportunity to come in and do something, because I want to know what it is you want to do. So you have to have a clear idea of where you want to go, what you want to do, how you want to get there. If you can tell me that, if we can have a conversation about that, I'm probably going to hire you.
That's awesome. So it's really about making that impression and like showing that you're eager and motivated and everything. That's great.
It really, in LA especially, we talk about entitlement.
Yes.
And too many people come at it with a sense of, I've done this, I've done that, so therefore.
Right.
And well, yeah, you've done that, but you've only done a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Bring more to the table.
Right.
Show yourself to be an exception. Show yourself to be that you've done the homework. You know what you want to do. Even if you haven't gotten there yet, you have an idea of where you want to go and what you want to do. Be able to communicate that. And when you do that, you're going to find people, I find most people are willing to sit down and listen and talk to you about it and be a mentor and give you that advice and help as to where to go. And don't let people, shoehorn you into just this.
Yeah.
It's easy to do in engineering. You get shoehorned into just being an engineer, electrical engineer, or just being good at this. Show yourself to be beyond that. Show yourself to be flexible and, again, available and capable.
Yeah. And I know, Tony, you and I have been talking a lot, and I've already told you about myself as well.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that's also invaluable to know is I personally came from, traditional sides of the network and the studio business, and then moved over to Amazon, and now I'm tech. Exactly what you were saying, learning something new, trying something different. The structure is very different there. Can you share a little bit about your path too? I know we talked about your background, but now where you are today, I know when we've been speaking, you're looking to try to continue to build your experience and keep going and growing.
I'm still doing it today. I have not stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And I've done that by not doing a strict broadcasting. I've actually gone back and forth. I got the opportunity to go over to EMC in the early 2000s when EMC was the largest storage company in the world, and they wanted to build a media solutions group. I'd never been in sales. I had never done stuff like that, but the opportunity was provided because I had worked with broadcasters, with broadcast vendors over the years. I had a reputation that I sort of understood what the industry needed. So I was given an opportunity to go over. I started EMC's Media Solutions Group. They moved me to the West Coast. I started a sales team, and we grew from 0 to about $65 million in sales in 2 years.
Wow.
And we had a large team, and we helped them develop the product for the industry. So that's right when a lot of people in the industry were looking for storage solutions.
Right.
So I went on the vendor side and stayed on the broadcast side. Showed myself to be flexible and go do that. Did that. And then from there, went to another company, a startup company, Isilon, which we started from scratch. Ended up being sold back to EMC several years later for about $4 billion. But we built that company.
Wow.
And then from there, I went back to the broadcast side.
Wow.
And I went back to the broadcast side and was at Discovery for many years who I loved being there doing that. And went back to ABC, but then went back to the vendor side again. So my last 8 years have been on the vendor side. And from there, I really got the opportunity to be involved in streaming and building streaming sites and building sites to engage customers, et cetera. Right. And that was a lot of fun. The last project I worked on was using machine learning and AI to develop workflows for distribution of content.
Wow.
I've now brought that experience back to the broadcast side.
Wow.
And now at a time when NFL media is growing and doing a lot of things, I'm on the forefront of that. So
it's amazing.
You never stop.
Yeah.
You have to keep reinventing yourself and keep going. And again, be able to step into other areas. Yeah. Well, one thing I had heard from somebody, I forgot who it was, who said they always took the job that scared them the most.
Right.
So don't get complacent. Do things that you aren't used to doing. Like I said, I had never done that before.
Yeah.
But I did it. I've done it 3 times. It's been very successful. But I've always brought that experience back to the broadcast side.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hope you all are taking notes because these are the nuggets of wisdom that you should use and hopefully motivate you as you go on. I think that's a very key thing is just never stop, keep going.
Right.
And just thinking of the technology that you've touched, like, kind of then and now, can you describe like how broadcast has changed when you first started to where it is now? You mentioned streaming, you mentioned, even looking at tape recorders back in the day. Yeah. Like, can you just explain a little bit about that difference? And then also, I guess, share a little bit with the our audience about how technology is changing and maybe how that's coming out of the consumer side now.
Right. So for years, broadcasting, all the broadcast equipment we used came from vendors like Grass Valley, Tektronix, Sony, RCA, many others. But over the years, we started a lot of technology was coming out of the consumer market, especially for electronic news gathering. We would go, instead of going to NAB every year, National Association of Broadcast Convention, we would go to the Consumer Electronics Show because tiny handheld cameras, gyro-mounted lenses, microphones, a lot of that technology was coming out of the consumer area.
Yeah.
For the last, I say 10 years, we've been inching very slowly to that digital conversion. The linear broadcast is still the money-making side of the business, but we finally hit that point where streaming is the future of broadcasting.
Right.
That came out of the consumer side. It came out of engaging consumers. A lot of people put up streaming sites years ago, but if you look at the big bet that Disney has made by going all out on streaming, and everybody is doing it. Netflix has really brought it along a little bit further. They set the goal that everybody's going for. But finally, we're more into the streaming, which is more consumer-driven, directly consumer-driven, than the linear broadcast side, which is commercial-driven, consumer-driven, but it doesn't have the direct touch to the consumer that streaming does.
Right.
And that's where we're going, and we're at that conversion now.
Right.
Everybody's looking at how you make that your business. The linear side is still the money making for the moment,
right?
But we're no longer jumping over digital dollars to pick up, analog dollars to pick up digital pennies. It's there, and you see the big bets that Disney has made, Time Warner, and others. So it's moving very, very quickly, and you have to be flexible. Yeah. You have to. One of the future things I think is in big data and understanding artificial intelligence, machine learning. Those are opportunities that, again, you don't necessarily have to have an advanced degree for.
Right.
But if you're on the forefront of understanding those technologies, and more important, how to use them, how to engage people with them, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's a great thing to look into now. I mean, streaming is so huge, and all those different things that you mentioned from the consumer side, like people who are interested in technology and having a career in there should look to that, see what people are doing, social media, how are they live streaming things, and, you know, just like you even mentioned these gadgets. I feel like a lot of times now you could just really do a show on your own with just the gadgets that you can pick up, you know, in the store. So that's all great. Speaking of companies, as some of our students might be graduating and looking to you know, go off into the workforce officially, do you have any, I guess, companies that you're like, keep an eye on them because they're good? I know you mentioned Disney; they're a big conglomerate, of course. But are there? And we are former Mouse employees, so we know the powerfulness of Disney. But are there any companies that you're like, hey, take a look at them? They're doing some cool stuff, and there's a lot of acquisitions now. So I'm sure these companies are twofold now.
Well, I've always loved Discovery, and I love Discovery, what Discovery does and how they do it. Their buyout of or merger, or whatever it is, with Time Warner, I think is going to open many opportunities. A lot of people don't realize this. Discovery is actually globally about 500 networks.
Wow.
So
globally.
Yeah. A lot of opportunity there. But then look at what Netflix is doing. They're still growing a little bit. I like what Apple is doing. They're still thinking about what they're doing. We're growing. We announced last week the NFL media is looking for a partner to grow what we're doing. So, you know, it's not necessarily a strict broadcaster. It may, Apple and Netflix are broadcasters these days, are not broadcasters. Right. But you never know where the next one is coming from. And so I would just keep an eye out for those. But those are the ones I look at, because those are the ones we're trying to catch up to right now. So, but there's a lot of opportunity in various other smaller streaming companies, and not necessarily in content. So many people are generating content. A lot of independent producers generating. So depending on what side of the business you're coming from, but from the broadcast side, it's wide open. From the engineering, from the tech side, any of those companies have opportunities for you. Right. If you show yourself to be worth it.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we touched upon some of the stuff that you look for, like hiring, like, you know, being confident, open to learning and everything, which is, I think, great tips as everyone looks to interview. Like, those are things that you should definitely keep into your skill set and your tips on like how to interview with different people. I know we probably only have like 2 minutes left. So I want to make sure we have time also to network with the rest of the attendees here. But just to kind of wrap things up, I would love to just kind of, I guess, 2 questions. First, let's talk about stories on the job, because I do want people to know that technology, a lot of times you think it's behind the camera and people who are engineers are, you know, not in the forefront, but we've kind of spoken about this, and you just having worked on the network side, what are some of your best stories on the job? Like things that you were like, this is amazing. And this is kind of why I think it's exciting to be in broadcast engineering and just work in this business.
Well, on the broadcast side, I came into news at a time when news was still, quote unquote, a public trust. And we did some major events. So I was involved in Berlin Wall, Tiananmen Square, South Africa. Wow. I traveled in the second Reagan, Bush, and Clinton White Houses. Wow. Political conventions, Desert Storm. Wow. So being right front and center of some of the major news events, but also doing things like building Isilon and selling it, bringing that company along from nothing and selling it to EMC was a really big moment for me to see that come about, to see something that you had taken and fostered and helped bring about. So it's been fun. I've had a lot of fun, more fun than I should be allowed to have, actually. But it's been great, and a lot of opportunities. And along the way, I've met a lot of people, and again, that opens up your networking. Being able to, I have friends around the world, and I like to go around the world and see them. Wow. But, you know, I've learned things about other companies and what they're doing. I had a friend who was the CTO at Singtel in Singapore. Wow. And places in Europe and in Asia and other places. But you build up that network and you get to know people and you get to learn a lot of the things.
Yeah.
It's really being able to talk to people and sit and listen.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, just sit and listen. I can listen to your stories all day. I know we've talked a lot about that.
Did.
Would love. I really wish that you guys could meet Tony in person. He's just fantastic.
Yeah, right.
But I would say too, in our last minute, if you can just share any words of advice with, the students and alum and anyone attending really about what's the best piece of advice you could give.
I don't know about advice, but what I will say is, again, it's very important to take every opportunity to learn. I've had the rare opportunity to have some really, really good mentors.
Yeah.
And that's really good too. But I've also learned just as much, if not more, from the bad bosses I've had.
Yeah.
There are some good ones, but I learned a lot, my people skills and learning about what motivates people, learn about how to deal with situations came from the bad bosses. So every opportunity is a learning opportunity. You don't have to look for that one mentor that's going to show you the way. Sometimes looking at how people do things the wrong way teaches you a lot. So I've had really very few good bosses, a lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
And that taught me more about dealing with people, dealing with office politics, dealing with all the different things that you and I have talked about, and remaining true to yourself.
Right.
And therefore keeping your own moral compass and direction about who you are and where you're going.
Right. Absolutely.
It makes you focus more, I think.
Absolutely. And I think too, like you said, you've had many bad bosses, very few good ones. I think that's the case in the industry, unfortunately, but you do learn from them. You learn from any good boss you have, and you learn from any bad boss that you have. So it's solid advice. I think that's also what kind of keeps you optimistic is like everything is a learning experience, like you said. And I think everything opens doors because the situations that you're in are not only about your boss, it's about the network that you make and the people that you work with.
And you'll be surprised if you've done a really good job, people will notice.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised. People may call you and say, "Hey, I know you're doing it. Would you like to do this?
Yeah.
Or would you have an interest in doing it?"
Right.
But it takes work.
Right. It takes work for sure. But I mean, it's all great. I know we're at time, so I will let the rest of the team come back on and sign us off. But it was such a pleasure to speak with you as always.
The first interview
together, post vaccine. So thank you everybody for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trisha and Tony. That was a great interview. And we made history today with the first in-person interview at an EBF virtual conference. So thank you both for doing that and for getting together and making it happen at the beautiful NFL studio. That was great. I learned a lot personally. Thanks, Tony, for joining us. We're excited to work more with you now that you're at the NFL. And Trisha, as always, a great interviewer. And of course, thanks to our tech committee, especially, of course, Chris, Diane Trineski, Rich Wolf, for suggesting Tony. He totally lived up to the hype. So really glad we had this interview. The next step here, we have until about noon Eastern to go into networking. So everyone, you're all probably familiar with the Hopin platform by now, but take a look at the tabs on your left. You're going to leave right when I'm done. You're going to leave, go into networking, and you'll be automatically paired, hopefully with a member of our EBF tech committee. If the numbers don't quite match up, students might have the chance again to network with other students, but just hop right into networking, follow the instructions there. And one thing to keep in mind, there's a strict time limit. At 5 minutes, you will be automatically rematched with a new person. And just be sure to hit the connect button while you're talking. If both of the networkers do that, you guys will be able to come back into Hopin after the fact and find the people you connected with so you can touch base with them after the fact. So that's networking. We're doing that until noon Eastern, and then we're going to the true kickoff for the day back on center stage when networking ends at noon Eastern. Thanks, everyone. That was fun, and we'll see you shortly in networking.